Welcome back to another episode of Exponential Africa, where we are on a mission to bring you the very best thought leadership and innovation to our African continent. We are at the Singularity University Global Summit in San Francisco, and we have Robyn Scott here with us today, who is the founder of a company called Apolitical, a platform that helps governments learn. Robyn, thanks for being on the show.
It's great to be here.
So do you want to just tell us a bit about your background and how did you get into this environment?
Sure. So I'm an African. I grew up in Botswana, Zimbabwe for a while, and South Africa for a while too. And against the backdrop of all the potential of the continent, but also the challenges it faces, I've always been interested in how you solve big global problems. I got into tech, and combining those two, an understanding of tech and then caring about global problems, ultimately brought me to government, because government is integral, whether you like it or not, in tackling every major challenge we face. The public sector employs more than 200 million people around the world. In many countries, it's the biggest employer. And those people are responsible for spending 40 cents in every dollar in most countries. So the decisions they make are so consequential for all of us, directly and indirectly.
And can you just tell us a little bit about what is Apolitical? What does it actually do, and what need does it fill?
Yeah, so Apolitical's mission is to make government smarter, so government works well for all people and for the planet. And the way we go about that is making it really easy for anyone in government, anywhere in the world, to find and share what's already working. Because there's a massive amount of duplication, reinvention of the wheel, siloed knowledge in government, and we want to open it up. So anyone in government has at their fingertips best practice.
Wow, amazing. So as an example, so government would sign onto the platform, and then they can share some of their best practices as well as get best practice from other governments.
So it's very driven by individuals. So we have, like in any network, we have individuals from government signing up. You have to be in government to sign up or working closely with government. We now have members of 170 different governments using the platform, tens of thousands of really influential policymakers. And they use it either to say, how do I regulate autonomous vehicles? How do I integrate refugees into my economy? So a very wide range of these big challenges government is facing today. And then if someone's working on something really innovative, they can share it on the platform. So one example recently was New Zealand experimented with making all its legislation machine readable. Super interesting. So breaking laws down into their building blocks. Who gets what under which conditions? And that has massive consequences for the interoperability of government with small business, for policymakers' ability to model the impact of new legislation and reduce the risk of unnecessary cost, etc. That piece went viral on the platform because it's obviously of so much interest to so many governments. So really cool stuff like that.
Amazing, wow. So it's super exciting. I mean, it seems like this is a no-brainer. What gave you, I mean, how long ago did you come up with this?
So I've been working on the idea since 2015. One of the things that made me excited about it was I've worked a lot in prisons, in South Africa's prisons. And one of the things that you learn in prison, we're doing this really cool program to teach prisoners and ex-offenders to code. But when you're in prison, you realize that most people end up there because of failures in policy, right? So they're let down by the healthcare system, the justice system, etc. I wanted to get upstream. So instead of dealing with consequences, when you're actually in prisons or dealing with crises in society, you want to be where the lawmakers are, so you avert those in the first place. So that was part of the compulsion. The other part was that you've got this massive domain, this 40% of GDP sector, which has been neglected by technology to date. And you've got an emerging sector, GovTech, which has a market of $400 billion. And very few entrepreneurs have gone there yet and done anything. So your potential to have a real impact is huge.
It's enormous. And I mean, I can just think about how much this could work in South Africa in our context, because we have quite a lot of challenges, and we need government to learn from the rest of the world. And I think this is, it's about scalable learning. It's about learning new things from new sources all the time, and never stopping that learning cycle, because as the world is rapidly changing, we need to keep learning faster and faster and faster.
We all know this in every sector. Ongoing learning is becoming critical, and government, perhaps more than anywhere, we need to see that happening. I mean, I sometimes say that government is facing 21st century problems, but working on a 20th century operating system.
Absolutely. I mean, what are you working with the South African government?
We have a bunch of members from South Africa. We haven't worked explicitly with the South African government. We'd like to, and we're really interested in what we call reverse policy innovation. So just as we've seen Africa be a leader in many technologies and leapfrog richer countries, so for example, mobile payments, off-grid solar,
yes.
The same can happen in policy. So some of the most exciting policies from around the world are actually coming from emerging markets where there's no pre-existing infrastructure, so people have much more...
No legacy.
Yeah, no legacy. So just to take a couple of examples, participatory budgeting, where citizens get to have a say in how a government's budgets are spent, was created originally in Brazil. It's now in 2,000 locations around the world.
Incredible.
In slums...
It's a completely leapfrogging the learning, because if somebody comes up with a great idea somewhere, you can just pop it in the next country or government.
Yeah, exactly. And rich countries can learn from poor countries. So there's a cool program supported by the UN in slums in Kenya to use Minecraft, the game, to enable children and other traditionally excluded groups to remodel their societies and their slums and their cities to give them a say in policy decision making. So we do have one really exciting link to South Africa, which is through our non-profit foundation called the Apolitical Academy,
yes.
which supports young people and people from excluded groups to get into politics, to run for office. And that is run by Lindiwe Mazibuko, who anyone in South Africa will know about.
She's be part of the DA. Yeah.
Exactly. And we have a program in Sweden, but we also have one across Southern Africa. And we're just seeing the most incredible candidates for office from business, from the health sector, from non-profits coming forward and saying, I want to stand up, I want to change my government.
That is so cool. Thanks so much. I hope you really enjoyed that episode. Make sure to like and subscribe to our page, and we'll see you on the next one. Keep smiling.